Hi, I'm Heidi Hutner, and today I'll be talking with Paul Blanch, a nuclear expert and an engineer who works on issues related to Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, just north of New York City, about 35 miles in Buchanan, New York. And there's a lot of things going on at Indian Point right now, so this is an interesting time to be having a conversation with him. Hi, Paul. So glad to have you on the show, and I wanted to ask you if you could answer some questions about what's happening in Indian Point. We have a tritium leak. We have the Spectra pipeline, which is slated to be built right on the property there. So could you, speak about what's happening now at Indian Point?
Yeah, let me thank you, Heidi. Good morning. But just a little bit of my background. I live about 90 miles away from Indian Point. I used to work for the president of Indian Point. I have about 50 years experience. I'm a registered professional engineer. I've worked at many nuclear power plants. I've been an expert witness for the state of New York and an expert witness for the people who were recently arrested for trespassing at Indian Point. And my experience is extensive in working with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I've worked for over 25 years at other nuclear power plants, primarily here in Connecticut. And lately, I've been concentrating on the dangers of nuclear power plants, and especially Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, which I consider, given their situation right now, the most dangerous nuclear power plant in the country and possibly the world. And the reason I say that is twofold. Number one, these nuclear power plants, while I am not opposed to nuclear, I used to sleep 100 feet away from a nuclear plant on a Navy submarine that was operated safely, and I always considered it safe. But the problem with the commercial industry, because of their economic incentives, they do not comply with the regulations and they do not operate them safely. And we could cite hundreds of instances where the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the exclusive regulator, refuses to enforce the federal regulations that are contained within the Code of Federal Regulations. Now, I said before that I believe that Indian Point is the most dangerous plant in the U.S. It's located in the highest area of population in the country. There are approximately 20 million people residing within 50 miles of the plant. And what really compounds that factor is the fact that we have natural gas transmission lines running adjacent to vital structures of the Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, and now they are constructing a brand new 42-inch diameter high pressure gas line also in the vicinity of the nuclear power plant. Mm-hmm. Just to give you an idea of the amount of energy that goes through these gas transmission lines, every minute the amount of energy is equivalent, or every 4 minutes, the amount of energy going through these lines is equivalent to the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. So should this pipe rupture, and they do, it's not uncommon for these pipes to rupture, the blast, while it wouldn't be a nuclear blast, the energy released would be equivalent to that of a nuclear blast.
Could you just explain that a little bit? Why would it be equivalent? How would that happen?
Well,
to a nuclear blast of Hiroshima?
Yeah, approximately 10 times a year in this country, transmission lines, which range in diameter from 22 inches all the way up to 42 inches, rupture for whatever reason, be it corrosion or someone is digging on top of the line or for some other reason. When they explode, they release the gas, and typically the gas explodes, like out at San Bruno, where we saw 8 people killed in a radius of more than 1,000 yards. The energy from that blast is equivalent to many millions of pounds of TNT equivalent. It's potential that the blast radius from a pipe rupture could go out from the rupture site as far as 8,000 feet by calculations done. Should that occur, should a blast occur either with the existing lines, which are located within 400 feet of the vital structures,
Right.
or the new line, which is located, well, about 1,500 feet from vital structures, either one of those exploding could result in a loss of power to the nuclear power plant. And I say that it could. I'm not saying it definitely would, but there's a high probability that it could. Now, what does a loss of power mean to a nuclear power plant? The Fukushima event, which happened 5 years ago on March 11th, wasn't caused by the tsunami or the earthquake. It was caused by a loss of power. Should a loss of power occur to the entire plant, and again, I'm not saying this would absolutely happen, it's just that the probability of it happening would significantly increase. But a complete loss of power, I can assure everyone, would cause an event that would be much worse than Fukushima for a number of reasons. Number one, the high population density and the infrastructure surrounding Indian Point, located about 25 miles north of New York City. And the fact that the Indian Point nuclear power plants have been operating, and there are 3 power plants there, been operating for a much longer period of time than the Fukushima reactors, meaning they have much more radioactive material stored on site capable of being released to the environment. Some estimates of the potential damage approach $8 to $10 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is about 10% of the gross domestic product. It would literally destroy the economics of the United States should that occur, because it's such a large portion of our country. And I have been fighting this issue with the regulators since prior to 2010, when this issue was first identified to me by a Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Spectra at Indian Point, and I pursued it. And since I've pursued it with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission formally. I have been misled, misinformed, and actually lied to by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I have tried everything in my power, formal written petitions, formal allegations, meetings with the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the head of the Office of Investigation, the Office of the Inspector General, the New York State Senators, Assemblywoman Galef, Nita Lowey, the Congresswoman, and I have the support from all these people to compel the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to enforce their regulations. What I was looking for and am looking for is that one takes a very structured look at what would be the impact if we have a rupture of one or more of those lines. I call it a risk assessment. How far would the blast radiate from the point of explosion, and what damage would it do? The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has claimed they've done that, but it was done on the back of an envelope with a hand sketch calculation, violating every engineering principle in the world for conducting any type of analysis. So the NRC has essentially provided me false information. The licensee, Entergy from Indian Point, has provided false information to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I have been working with the Pipeline Hazards Materials Safety Agency, who is responsible for the overall safety and design of the pipelines. They are not doing their job. They're not enforcing their regulations. On the positive side, we saw yesterday, and we have met with the Governor Cuomo of New York, and you probably saw it in the New York Times, that he has ordered his agencies to perform an independent risk assessment.
And so they're going to halt building the pipeline, from what the news said yesterday.
I don't think the governor has the power to halt the gas construction. He requested that FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, halt construction. It's a request. He doesn't have the authority over the federal agency.
And he doesn't have the authority to say the plant should be shut down and decommissioned, does he, as a governor?
He does not have that authority. That exclusive authority is delegated by Congress to rely with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So state agencies, and I've been through this before at Vermont Yankee, state agency, state government has no jurisdiction over safety issues related to nuclear power plants, which is pretty sad.
It is sad. So I'm wondering, we don't have a lot of time, so I want to just ask you a few questions, if you don't mind, which is, for people who are listening and who are concerned, they ask, and people ask me all the time, because I'm someone who's concerned about Indian Point, and I've followed closely what happened in Fukushima, and I've interviewed a lot of women from Fukushima and men, and on various issues related to the post-event and pre-event, and engineers. I've spoken with Arnie Gunderson, who's a nuclear engineer. You probably know him. What can people do if the governor can't shut the plant down? How can the citizens make that happen if they're concerned about safety?
One of the things that we have a meeting with Sandy Gale, for the Assemblywoman, who is very closely tied with the governor. We absolutely need this risk assessment. We need her assistance and the assistance of Nita Lowy and Engel, the Congress people, to work with the governor to assure we have a transparent and valid independent risk assessment. And if that shows that the risk is unacceptable, I think that it would put a lot of pressure on the NRC to close down Indian Point, given the fact.
And possibly also put the pressure on FERC as well to not allow Spectra to continue building the pipeline next to the plant? Or are they separate? Is that risk assessment separate?
We're talking some big money here. We're talking billions of dollars with FERC and their construction.
Right.
To stop that is going to be very, very difficult. They're going to fight the governor tooth and nail on that one. I doubt they're going to do it. It's going to be an interesting battle. I'm looking forward to the battle. And
decommissioning a plant costs billions of dollars too.
Decommissioning a plant does cost billions of dollars. Indian Point will probably be in the range of $2 to $3 billion, for which they probably don't have the money. So,
and I know we're going to have to end in a second, but there's also the concern, in addition to the pipeline with the natural gas that can explode, there's also, there's been assessments, there's a Columbia study that shows there's a risk of earthquakes, 7 on the Richter scale. There are 2, so there's a study that I think you've seen. What do you do you have any commentary about that?
Well, I have seen that study, or I've seen the results of the study. The gas lines are supposed to be designed to withstand a seismic event.
And the plant itself and the storage? The storage site that's holding the nuclear waste, can that withstand?
They're designed for seismic. Whether they're designed adequately for that Richter 7 earthquake, I'm not sure. I'm more concerned about the rupture of a 65-year-old gas line than I am a seismic event that I think has a lower probability.
I see. So we have to go, and this is just to me, it's a very scary issue. I think it is for a lot of people. There are many folks right now who are protesting up near the plant. Many people along the Spectra pipeline going north of New England who are protesting as well. Many different groups, Mothers Out Front, SAPE, Sane Energy, there's a long list of them, Clearwater, Riverkeeper. I think Sierra, all the big environmental organizations are on this. So I want to thank you so much for your expertise and your time and speaking with us today, because what you're sharing with us is very, very important, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. So this was an incredibly informative episode about nuclear power plant, which is located just north of New York City in a range of a population of 20 million people who could be impacted if there was this rupture of a gas line next to Indian Point Power Plant. We thank you so much for watching today. Stay tuned. We'll have more episodes on these sorts of issues and all things pertaining to sustainability and the environment. Thanks so much.